What's up, guys? Good morning to all of my friends. Today we are in a TRG Republica Square for the Belgrade walking tour, and here we go. Let me introduce my friends come guide, Mr. Zelko Petrovic. He's from the Belgrade, and today he will show us around the city. So let's begin.
Official beginning of the story about Belgrade. Guys, Belgrade City, the place where lockdowns couldn't change the mind of the people, the mood of the people. For a while, yes, but once they realized that it's not gonna kill everyone around, then just people went out again and they started living their proper life like they used to. And then of course this is the place where we meet for every single city tour, which is guaranteed departure on our website. So if someone is happy to walk even more today, to hear even more stories, to see even more places in Belgrade, 3 o'clock we have Zemun tour. So Zemun is a part of Belgrade, just outside of this central part. It's across the rivers. It used to be a different town in a different country for a long period. Now it's all metropolitan Belgrade, but with different architecture, different stories, something else very charming, which can be definitely a nice option. Tomorrow, 3 o'clock, there is an underground tour. Underground places closed for public mostly, and then when we are with a group, we always call. They open it for us. That can be a unique experience. Monday 10:30 there's a different tour going from here different way, but step by step this is the first tour that we should start the city sightseeing, because we'll cover the most important part of the oldest historical Belgrade streets, and of course with the fortress as the highlight. So guys, we meet here on the Republic Square, but listen, I'm not every day a tour guide. So if tomorrow or the day in this afternoon there will be a colleague of mine. So if someone of the colleagues waits here or 10 meters that way or that way, but no worries where they meet, depends of the feeling. Just yellow umbrella, Belgrade walking tours, yellow umbrella. For example, last time when I started this tour, I was closer to the airport on the other side, but I was thinking it should be a bit more people than 4, like last the time I had, because it's Saturday, it's a holiday as well, and of course I just said, okay, here is the best, because we have definitely more space. But yellow umbrella is a big sign. T-shirts are maybe a bit yellow, but under, so you cannot see it. So guys, the place where we start is called the Republic Square, the main square in the city, the main meeting point of Belgrade. People, and of course very often there are happenings on the square or nearby the square. So if you have to choose 3 seconds in Belgrade, 3 places in Belgrade, 1 second must be here, 1 second must be there where we go later above the confluence of the rivers, the Sava and the Danube, and maybe 1 second at the Saint Sava temple, which is also one amazing attraction. Lucky all of you, I'm sure that you have much more than 3 seconds, so you can see many nice places. The Republic Square, the meeting point, and there are 3 things which are worth of the story. First of all, it's the National Museum. So guys, this building with the 2 flags above the entrance, actually that's above the exit, because the entrance is from the other street. So this is the oldest alive cultural institution in the Republic of Serbia. The museum has a couple of hundreds of thousands of the items, related with archaeology, with numismatics, Serbian art and European art. The entrance in the museum is 300 Serbian dinars, which is approximately same as $3 US. That means that the entrance in the National Museum is cheaper than the beer in Belgrade clubbing, which is absolutely great, of course. But listen, if you go to the museum, be ready to spend lots of time inside. In a way, because it's not too big, but if you want to focus on the things, you can really spend a whole day. But if you want a briefly, impression about the National Museum, you can really go. By the way, it used to be free on Sundays, so tomorrow it is definitely free. Monday is always no working day. Please, the National Museum on the Republic Square, and then on the other side there is another nice building, that is the National Theatre. The National Theatre started the season number 153 at the beginning of October, And then the National Theatre is pretty famous. It's actually just one of 17 theaters in Belgrade City, but in the same time it's opera, drama, ballet, so there are 2 stages inside, so it's very famous because it's centrally located. And another thing, the first ever theater that Belgrade had was on the same spot, but not this building. So what actually happened, there was a theater built in 1869, and on the left part of the theater you can see 1869, but then on the right part you can see 1922. So what happened? The old theater was actually bombed as Belgrade was in World War I at the beginning. There was random bombing, the theater was demolished. Then of course they couldn't work for a while. After the war there was the theater reconstructed fully, even changed the look, and then of course they opened it in 1922. After that moment until this moment there were some smaller or bigger reconstructions, but the theater didn't change itself too much. Altogether, theater is there with the Republic Square, with the National Museum. Of course, it makes a very nice combination of, let's say, culture on the square, but also there is the third important thing, that's the monument of Prince Mihailo or Prince Michael standing here. So guys, you see the monument looks pretty old, and it's really the first ever monument erected in Belgrade in that artistic form. So it was made by one Italian artist, Enrico Pazzi, and then it was erected here in the sub-square in December 1882. December 1882, the monument was dedicated to Prince Mihailo, of course with a reason. So if you got the monument on the main square, then of course he was a very important person. So what was the most important he did in Serbia the second half of the 19th century was that during his political power, he was a prince of Serbia. In that time Serbia was principality. So it was a prince as a leader, but Serbia was not fully independent state yet, because there was still the Ottoman Empire officially around, but Serbia had autonomous rights within the Ottoman Empire. So during his father Miloš, Serbia got autonomous rights. After that Serbia was not independent, of course was in medieval age, but then there was a long break under the Turkish occupation. And then what happened? Prince Mihailo was a, pretty educated person, right? He was schooled here in Serbia, then in Vienna, Austria, came back from Vienna, wanted to introduce some good changes in Serbia here, and then of course he wanted a full independence for his country. And then for a full independence at that time, of course they needed a strong diplomacy, but they also needed very strong army. So every country wants to make security on the high level, of course needs a strong army. What happened is that he organized very strong army, and then they started about 5 days, 5 years actually, the negotiations between Serbian and Turkish Ottoman side here in Belgrade and in Istanbul. And after those 5 years of negotiations from 1862 until 1867, at the end the Turkish Ottoman army left Belgrade forever, and Belgrade became again free Serbian city in April 1867. After 440 years long break, Belgrade became a free city in a Serbian hands under Serbian control. Of course, grateful Serbian society from Belgrade at that time wanted to say big thanks, and this monument was erected here. Symbolically, Prince Mihailo is riding the horse as a leader at the time, but he's also showing with his right hand to the south of Serbia. So he symbolically says, let's go to liberate the rest of the country. Because in April 1867, only some cities in central Serbia were liberated, and their names are written around the monument. You see 3 cities on this side, 3 cities on the other side. So those all cities are what central Serbia is today. A bit of west of central Serbia, a bit of east of central Serbia, and then but southern Serbia stayed under the Ottoman Turkish control, and he symbolically says, let's go to liberate the rest. The rest was also liberated, but after the Balkan Wars, 1912 and 1913, so basically the liberation of Serbian historical territory lasted for more than 100 years. From 1804, when there was the first Serbian uprising against the Ottoman Turkish Empire, until the end of World War I, 1918, when there was victory in the war, and then of course the northern part of Serbia was also, let's say, not liberated, it was gained because Serbian side was majority in that part of previously Austro-Hungary. So altogether there was lots of history in those 100 years, lots of history in last 100 years, lots of history in the centuries before. So it's actually too much of crazy history around here. So this is why people will be talking firstly about the peace and then everything else, because peace is what really makes the people happy enough to do the good job, because the country passed in only last 30 years. There was bombing in 22 years ago, there was civil wars 30 years ago. So after those two serious things, it's just for our generation, right? But those older generations, they faced even more big problems. And after those big problems that passed through the country, people do not need too much to be smiled and happy and to have too much fun. That's why, guys, if you ask yourself, how come Corona is not frightening Serbs? How come Corona frightened someone who was looking at the bombs falling down just 20 years ago? Of course, there are people really afraid, but really, when you're used to have a much bigger trouble than one possible invisible enemy, which is changing the variants every 2.5 weeks, then you will say, you know, okay, but yeah, something like this. Really, this is what majority is. Of course, there are the rules sometimes which should be respected, and this is how the mentality is. Okay, so I think I told you everything what's important in the Republic Square. So one more time, Theater, Museum, and Prince Mikhail. Before we leave, I have to tell you one more thing, which is nice to mention. You see it already without me, but it's always good to know and to explain a bit. Guys, when you look at let's say the architectural style of the buildings all around us, you will just see that there are so many different buildings built in a different architectural styles in a different periods, and they are all making what Belgrade is. So how come is Belgrade so beautiful in one hand, but in the other hand it's an architectural monster? So everything is related with, if you ask me, with two things, two big reasons. It's a crazy history and it's also the crazy politics. So if you ask how big diversity we can have just around here, it is all related with World War I and World War II. Both of these wars, they passed very heavily through Belgrade, and Belgrade was very damaged in those wars. At the end of the wars, Belgrade liberated itself, but Belgrade remained as a capital of our country. There were different names of our country, right? But Belgrade was always, as a capital, the leader of the state development. Even today, there are lots of investments in Belgrade. Even waterfront, they say the largest investment in southeast of Europe last 30 years. And listen, so it's still the leader of the state development somehow. And then they never had enough time to think about the previous, all the buildings which were, you know, in ruins remaining. They were just building the new things on the old spot. And another reason is a political diversity. Because guys, in only last 80 years, people in this country politically passed through royalism, communism, socialism, dictatorship, democracy, and something we call today, I don't know what's called, but it's kind of democracy, something like this. So altogether, people have passed through so many of these systems, and they had to find a way to live their life, and that's why do not be surprised. These days, please be open to the locals, and you can really have a nice time around. And you will really meet the people, same generation. Some people will tell you there was the best ever during Josip Broz Tito, communist leader in 60s, 70s last century. Some people tell you, come on, it was the worst time ever to be under the communist system in the country. Some people tell you, but come on, the kings were doing the best job ever. Some people tell you, but come on, the king left the country when the Nazis attacked in 1941. He flew away from Europe, even to US, was somewhere there, not maybe in Florida, but somewhere else, which was much safer than here, which was occupied. Belgrade, one killed German, 100 locals had to be killed. And then, on the other hand, some people tell you, but come on, now we have democratically elected president and government, everyone has the right to vote. But it looks like it's not so important who is voting, you know, it's important who is counting the votes after 8 p.m. It looks like this, really. And then altogether, if you ask me what's the best about the politics, turn off your TV, wake up with a smile, hug the people you love around. Otherwise, you can always complain about all the things happening around. And this is what some people still didn't realize, that just move the TV from the home and some news, and that can be much easier. This is what I did at least more than 15 years ago, and I trust me, it works. Okay, now that's everything about the square. One more very important thing. These days you will really feel a festive mood. By the way, today is a Catholic Christmas holiday and for Catholic Christians and some of other Christians, but not for Serbian Orthodox Christians. So Serbs are mostly Orthodox Christian believers following Julian calendar, the old calendar. So if you're here on the 7th of January, and then it will be a really empty around. Why? Because it's not working day, everyone is at home with their families, and that's what it is. But listen, the festive mood is already active last couple of days, because there was a St. Nicholas holiday on the 19th, then now, you know, the school is slowly finishing, of course, at least the first part, then the new year is coming, then the people celebrate many companies celebrate maybe successful years, so they go for some good time. Christmas market is active around, small, but again it's good. Then there are maybe some discounts. People want to be good looking for the holidays, they go for shopping, so it's really busy, really nice. There are the trumpet bands in the afternoon all around here. You have to be part of it as well, so it's really good. Listen, 2 million amazing people, but always among 2 million great people there are 2-3 pickpockets. So please, all important things of yours keep on the safe same places. So this is my wallet, this is my phone. My wallet full of money. It's not, by the way, just so full of money. But listen, it's not here. It's not here. This is so naive to leave your important stuff around. And because the thieves, the pickpockets, they always try to be professional. As I'm trying to be very professional tour guide to make you smile and happy, of course they try to be professional to take your wallet, right? So please, everything important you can keep around here. If you are very generous to the pickpockets, of course you can leave your wallet here, empty wallet here, and with a message, ha 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 ha. That's maybe more than enough for them, and that's absolutely fine. So that's it. Thank you for coming today. I'll be your tour guide for next at least 2 hours. We were even invited by one small Christmas market which is on that side of the city to come. They promise even the free mood wine at the end for everyone. Why not? If you like it, we can just finish there, which is fine. Of course, always nice. And even my magic bag has some small surprises for us. So yeah, I'm better tour guide when you see the bag on my back. What we do now, we are heading down around here. We go to the Bohemian area, traditional, nice, very old, interesting street. Then after that we go through the older town, a mix of the architecture as well, also a bit of heritage, Turkish, Serbian, Jewish. Then we go to the highlight of the tour, Kalemegdan Park and Belgrade Fortress, 2000 years of the history, absolutely great views. Belgrade has amazing geographical location. It's the only European capital situated on the confluence of two big, long and important European rivers. In peace it's a great spot. Of course in the wars you remember that it's absolutely hard, but then outside of the fortress is that small market. So yeah, I don't mind, I love talking and walking, so if you're happy to listen, just follow me. If you want to leave any moment, if you're in hurry, please let me know, because I just want to have a feeling that everything is fine. The tour doesn't have any price, it's a tip-based tour, so that means you will be the ones who judge about the quality at the end, and you can leave the tip in my bag. I'll not be watching how much you will take with your wallets. Of course it is very important as a income really, but on the other hand I'm not here only because of money. I'm here because I love this what I do. This is my tour number 3195. So you belong really to the crew of 60,000 people from all over the world. All of you, if you say some nice good things about Serbia, my mission will be completed. If you think that it was deserved some tip, of course you can do it and I'll be grateful, but I will spend it these days, so it's just, yeah, the money is to be spent, right? So that's it. Here we go. Are you ready, by the way?
Yes.
Yeah. There we go. Mood around. So this is, by the way, Skadarska Street. Skadarska is a bit longer than this what we are going to see, and then smaller part of Skadarska where there is no traffic with the cobblestones and these traditional restaurants. It's called the Skadarlija. So guys, Skadarlija is the main Bohemian area. So that means the main drinking and the main eating area. But it's not only drinking and eating, it's also about Serbian culture and art. So now I will tell you a bit more about the history, then a bit about the atmosphere in this street. Guys, the beginning of the 19th century, so let's say around 200 years ago, this area was almost at the end of Belgrade, because Belgrade was much smaller and everything was closer to the square and later closer to the fortress. And this was inhabited by some quite poor Serbian, Roma, Turkish people at the time. But then Belgrade was expanding itself, and then the city officials ordered to the people who lived here, if they wanted to keep that position which was becoming central as well, they had to build the houses in this style, at least with the bricks, with some gardens behind, so to be kind of good looking at that time. And really some of those they really made it around here. And then of course before and later they were doing some craft stuff, so there was a bit of a kind of old-fashioned shopping street around here, inhabited by some people who knew their own business. They were selling the things. But at the end of the 19th century, in 1880s, something changed the history history of this street and the feeling in this street forever. There was one man originally from Czech Republic, but he and his family moved to Serbia a bit earlier, and then in 1880s, 100 meters down the street to the right, they opened the first brewery in Belgrade, so the first beer factory. What happened is, then of course, then the locals, they tried it, a good taste beer. They loved it a lot, and of course, even today, beer is one of the most popular drinks in our country. By the way, Belgrade has the largest festival in southeast of Europe. It's a Belgrade Beer Fest in the middle of August every year. And listen, they started drinking that beer, and even those people who were selling their craft stuff, they also started selling that beer. But step by step, the people realized that they were actually making more money while selling beer and alcohol and food than selling their souvenirs and crafts. And they really, they just changed the purposes of their own small companies and shops. That's why very soon, the second half of the 19th century, this street got lots of traditional places. And now I will teach you the first nice and important Serbian word, which will be the name of Serbian traditional place. So the name of traditional place is kafana. So can you pronounce kafana?
Kafana.
So you see, very easy word. So by the way, I'll teach you a couple of more words, so it will be a small language course. But kafana is the word which everyone knows. And when you say to the locals, let's go to kafana, they know that you are ready for a good time. So what's actually kafana? It's a mix. So it's actually all together: bar, cafe, restaurant, pub, even the place where the students bring some scripts and they study, but also the place where these days companies are celebrating successful year, or where the couples go, where the families go, older, younger, everyone. And then what makes Kafana different than every other place in Serbia to have fun, it's actually live Serbian traditional music every evening or even afternoon when the Kafana is busy. So there is a live band going from the table to the table, and they always play very nice traditional songs. The traditional songs are always very emotional. They always talk about better past or better future or lost love, very emotional songs, oh my God. And then listen, of course we are able to invite the band to play just for us as a group of the friends, right? So we say, let's come here. Then they will surround the table where we are all. They will play some songs for us. But if someone of us orders the favorite song, then of course they will just come to play on the ears of that person. So it's a very emotional feeling, we take another shot, then they play more. When they play more, we tip more. So when we tip more, they play more again. It's a good circle of fun. But this is not a clubbing area. This is the area to start in the evening for around 1.5 to 2 hours here, maybe with some food, and then you go for the loud music places where it's clubbing and lots of dancing. So this way of fun that you will see these days here, it's actually same as it was maybe 100 or 150 years ago. So nothing too much has changed except of the interior of kafanas, which is now looking much more modern than once, wooden fire and wood stuff around. But still, it's a pretty nice. Of course, kafanas are not only here; there are kafanas everywhere. But some of the oldest are around here as well. So this was the first and important story. We will continue down the way. We'll stop one more time. Just to mention, this is the flag of Skadarska Street. It's one stick, one rose, and one hat. One stick, one rose, and one hat are presented on the flag. And yeah, I'll tell you a bit more about tradition just a bit down the street. We'll stop one more time. That's it. The main drinking and eating street. But the interesting question is now, okay, how did this street become such a nice and important Bohemian street, drinking street? I'll tell you. You remember the Republic Square and the theater was there, right? So guys, the theater on the Republic Square was supposed to be opened in 1869. And they wanted to open the theater, but actually they faced one interesting problem. Belgrade at that time, 150 years ago, was much smaller than right now. We can say that Belgrade has around 2 million people now, while 150 years ago it had only around 25,000 people. So guys, there was a big theater for not so big city, right? And then of course they were missing poets, painters, writers, musicians, journalists and some other people to work in the theater. But the problem was quickly solved. What they did, they just invited lots of poets and painters from the countryside. And really smart, young, talented people, ambitious people, they were looking for the job in the theater. And then while looking for the job in the theater, they were also looking for the cheap apartments for their life. They were ready even to share the cost with the roommates, but to work in the such a great theater at the time. And really what they were doing, really they looked for the cheap parts of Belgrade. What happened, this street, Skadarska, showed up as a great location because it's only 2-3 minutes quick walk from the theater, but it showed up also as a pretty affordable street at the time. And now it's one of the most expensive parts, and it was affordable 150 years ago. So how come? It is because you remember what kafanas are, right? Kafanas, traditional places, were mostly the places where only men were going. So there was mostly male atmosphere. The men were sitting, eating, smoking, drinking, sometimes drinking much more than they really needed. Then of course they started talking sometimes arguing, and sometimes boxing. And of course no one wanted to live in the street where there was a bit of boxing, in the afternoon or evening. Of course it was not too much, but it happened. And then the prices went down. And then when the poets and painters, writers, musicians, actors, all of those, when they realized that this was very good location and with the cheap prices, of course they just inhabited the area. They rented all possible apartments here. They lived even together, 5 to 10 of them. Like even this plate on this old house is showing us 10 names of Serbian writers, poets, painters, male and female lived. And of course after a long period of living in this street, you can imagine the street full of the artists and poets and painters. They just transformed the street in a really beautiful, emotional and of course artistic area. That's why this is not only about drinks and food, it's also about art and culture. And then this house, which belonged to this gentleman, I'll tell you the side. He lived here. This was his house, and it's Jura Jakšić, one of the greatest poets and painters ever we had. And then Jura lived here. So listen to the story about Jura's drinking career. Jura lived in the middle of the Skadarska, and of course whenever he goes out of his home, he could see some the colleagues from the theater. Of course the drinks were available everywhere, the good food as well. So he was really happy about social life and cheering with friends. And then what happened is also that he was cheering very often and sometimes too much. Long evening of drinking, he said, okay, it's enough of drinks tonight, let's go home. For tonight, let's go home. And he really went home, he slept, but in the following morning when he woke up, he woke up with a big hangover. And then he said to himself, oh Jura, you have a big hangover almost every day, your liver suffers a lot, your poetry is not so good like the poetry was before, please man, stop drinking alcohol, that will be great for your future. And really he decided to stop drinking. After that decision, he left the home, then he walked up and down this street lots of times during the day. He didn't want to go to kafanas even when Jura's friends were calling. He was saying, no guys, thank you so much, I don't go to kafanas anymore. And really the whole day passed, Jura didn't have any alcohol drink. But at the end of the same day, there was around 10 p.m, Jura wanted to go home. Then really he went behind a corner, but instead of entering his home to finish the day, then he stopped himself in front of the door. He looked at the door and he said something like this, again to himself. He said, oh Jura, you were so brave today. You didn't drink the whole day long. You are hero of this amazing day. I must give you something nice, man. I must treat you with something what you love the most. And what do you think what happened with Jura? Jura treated himself again by going back to the place where he really loved to be a lot. So just please remind me the name of the place because I currently forgot, and you learned on the previous spot.
Kafana.
That's it. Of course, kafana was the choice of Jura. Jura just went back on the street and then to the nearest kafana he jumped in. The friends were already in the corner, so he jumped in a crew, called the waiter for the drink. So basically he stopped cheering to the friends just one afternoon. At the end of the day, was very proud of himself and went back to do what he really loved to do. And that's a social life and a bit of good times with the friends. And of course, that's what we call bohemian people, bohemi, the people who did such a great job for the culture, art, music, poetry, general society. But every moment of their hard job was well done. They were ready to meet the friends and family to cheer for, let's say, successful day or a, let's say, even better future. So altogether, yeah, that's why even today the social life and generally life and nightlife is a big thing for the people around. Jura left his home for the cultural purpose to Belgrade people, so that's why it's not kafana here, it's a cultural institution. Even me, I had 2 evenings of Jura's poetry inside, so it's definitely a nice place. And whenever you see the lights in the afternoon, and it's always free entrance, so you can always enter. And then of course, we learned about Jura's drinking career, but we still don't know what were the favorite drinks of Jura. Number 1 drink he loved a lot was wine. Serbia has excellent wine. Some of the wines you can also try around here. Then please, of course, he loved the beer. At that time coming, you see, from just the brewery behind the corner. And like almost everyone in our country, he was in love with the Serbian traditional brandy. Maybe some of you have heard the story, maybe some of you have tried already, but there is something in Serbia that people really like a lot. They really make it a lot, and they are really happy to share with friends. So what's that? It's a traditional brandy called rakia. Have you ever heard about rakia? Many of you. So what's actually rakia? Rakia is a traditional brandy made of distillation of fermented fruit. So it's a fruit brandy. The most traditional Serbian rakia is made of plum fruit, so it's called the šljivovica, but also every other plum which is a bit, every other fruit which is a bit juicy, like a quince, apricot, pear, apple, grape, there can be rakia made of course. So that's why one by one these days, and of course you will have a good time with rakia. But you know, rakia is a very often strong drink, so it can be very often 45, 50, 55% of alcohol, while some rakias are definitely less. But homemade rakia is very often around 50, which is a general strength and normal strength for the people around. And the more time you spend in Serbia, more you will see that rakia is not only a social life drink, it's really spiritual and ritual drink, and it's also a part of a tradition. So the tradition was always going from the father to the son, and that's the same through the generations. And then now, of course, thanks to all of you who came to visit us, thanks to the people like Jura was, thanks to this beautiful street and long tradition of Serbian people, you have to know that it's almost impossible to leave Skadaska without trying something very important for Serbian tradition. So my magic bag has this surprise for all of us. If you know what the surprise is, I'll share with you. If you don't know, you'll be the first group ever that didn't get it. So tell me please what the surprise is.
Rakia.
Thank you very much. Yes, here we go with some homemade rakia made by grandfather of mine. It's a honey brandy. It's actually plum brandy originally with honey. It's not 55%. It's only 26% alcohol. So it's a sweet because of honey. It's a strong because of plum. Of course, I have some cups here to share with you. Then I have some rakia to share as well. And then of course we can cheer. If you drink, if you don't drink, we also cheer for the life, of course. And then yeah, you will love me more after rakia. And if I'm that tour guy, you will say, okay. Is a combination of two originally Turkish words, dort and yol. Now we say together, and shorter we say dorçol. But dort yol, translated from Turkish to English, it means four ways or four roads, intersections of four important roads. Why? Because long time ago, let's say around 300 years ago, when there was a still Turkish Ottoman Empire around here, couple of blocks down the way was one of the most important intersections with the four roads like this. One of those was going directly to the southeast from Belgrade toward Istanbul, which was the capital of the big empire. Local population, they heard the dort yol, and then they melted the two sounds, t and y, quickly said it's a ch, and it's a ch, and we have a ch. And of course dorçol just remained as the name of the part of the city. But guys, dorçol has changed the look. So, pozdrav Milane, porodici tvoje lepoj. Uživaj, ciao. So this is another good friend and a colleague, also tour guide. So please, dorçol has changed the look. During the Turkish Ottoman period, dorçol area looked much more oriental. So that means that there were more curved streets, cobblestones around like those in Skadarska just a moment. Then also there were more mosques, because in the Ottoman Empire the Islam was the main religion at the time. And then please, now when you take a look around in dorçol, you cannot see sorry for this, yeah, it's a garbage here. So you cannot see now the curved streets anymore that much. So what happens is that just focus on the story. Please, the 19th century, Serbia got autonomous rights, and then the architects and Serbian people, they were able more to decide how to make their own city, and then they made everything straight angles and straight streets, because being free for Serbia in the 19th century was not only pushing the Turkish army away from its territory, being free was also being back in European culture where Serbia belongs. That's why they wanted everything straight, like in most of Central and Western European cities. And then everything remained as a chessboard. Everything is straight around, but still there are some Oriental heritage that remained. That's why two next stops we will make in front of the oldest Turkish house, and after that we'll see the only one preserved mosque in Belgrade, which will be also two unique stories. But before we go there, I'll be back into a bit of history and a bit of art. I'm here living, and trust me, I can really tell you that this city is changing in a really good way. There are those bad things, like, you know, bigger population, bigger pollution, more cars, bigger crowd. But there are much good things. Belgrade was hosting EuroLeague Final Four basketball, Eurosong, world and European competitions in sport, the hotels, medical institutions, then many good things. And this what we have right now, like you all together and me together, this is such a great thing. So there were, Corona stops a bit, but still it goes step by step. Hopefully the next year will be great. So altogether, this city had a great reputation for the city of future in Southeast of Europe, and really there is a huge potential in the whole country. But in the same time, while it will be maybe the city of future in Southeast of Europe, Belgrade will always hold the ugliest European historical record, which says that the city of Belgrade has been destroyed completely between 38 and 44 times. Then the city woke up again on the same position from the ashes, like the phoenix. And then when I say to you, the city has been destroyed so many times, around 40, I don't mean that the Republic Square where we started the story was destroyed many times. No, the Republic Square is a quite young part of the city, established around 170 years ago. But guys, Belgrade in the past was always a smaller. And everything important in Belgrade was exactly there where we go later, where the fortress is and small area around the fortress. That part suffered a lot, was almost 40 times destroyed, 70 times bombed, and Belgrade itself passed through 115 battles through the history. Some sources say that around 6 million people lost their life in all of those battles around, of course calculating as well as World War I and World War II. So guys, when I say 40 times destroyed and 70 times bombed, of course I'm not going to count you all of those bombings because I don't know them all, But the worst moments are also the most developing moments, but also the worst moments of the history happened maybe in the last century, 20th century, because 20th century there were two big world wars. Belgrade was of course part of it, and then there were another problems local, let's say. So Belgrade during the 20th century was the most bombed city in Europe. World War I, two bombings, World War II, two bombings, and 1999, the fifth bombing. So altogether 5 times it was bombed, and then all of these bombings was actually unique. So listen to this. Right at the beginning of World War I, Belgrade was the first city bombed in the war. 1914, 1 month after assassination of Franz Ferdinand in Sarajevo city, 1 month later, which by the way triggered the war, 1 month later Austro-Hungarian army surrounded Belgrade on the riverside. I'll show you the spot, launched the first bombs toward the fortress. That was the real beginning of World War I. Then it was Austro-Hungarian bombing. Austro-Hungarian and German army together bombed in 1915. In 1915, Belgrade has fallen and it was occupied until 1918. In 1918, there was the end of the war and victory. Then, a bit more than 20 years later, there was World War II. During World War II, Belgrade was also very unique. At the beginning of the war, Belgrade was bombed by the Nazi German army without announcement of the war. The 6th, the 7th, the 10th and the 11th of April 1941, Belgrade, the rest of Yugoslav territory was bombed, and Yugoslavia capitulated only after 11 days of given resistance. So basically almost no resistance because the country was not ready for it. 1941 there was Nazi bombing. 1944 the allies of Yugoslavia, British and American army, also bombed Belgrade very heavily. And then what happened? You will ask me now, how come the allies bombed Belgrade if they were on the same side in the war? So there are a bit of theories on conspiracies, but widely accepted is that the Allies wanted to bomb Belgrade to try to push the Nazi headquarters from the city away from Belgrade, because Belgrade was somehow the capital of Southeast Nazi-occupied Europe, and really there was a rule. One killed the German soldier, they were supposed to kill 100 local people, and they were really doing it at the beginning. One wounded German, 50 locals. This was the rule. Others who occupied Yugoslavia, in that time Yugoslavia was occupied by Hungarian, by Nazi German, by Croatian, by Albanian, Bulgarian. And then of course there was very heavy story around all the territory. What happened? The Allies somehow wanted to help. But while trying to help, they were randomly bombing Belgrade, not particular places where the Nazis were controlling, and they even killed more people than the Nazis at the beginning. They even ruined more of Belgrade than the Nazis. And then what happened? Belgrade was really liberated at the end of the war, but not by the Allies, by the Yugoslav Partisan Army, Yugoslav Communist Army, and the Red Soviet Army. So Soviets and Yugoslavs together, they were pushing the Nazis step by step, street by street, house by house. 8 days in October 1944, the Nazis were pushed across the rivers, step by step across away from the territory of Yugoslavia. The city war was going on all around us where we are now. That's why some of these houses nearby us, they still have the bullet holes in the facades. Some of them were never repaired. That's why, for example, on the left-hand side you can see the flag of North Macedonia. And then the building, the yellowish one, a bit higher before that brownish that has a bullet hole in the facade. They are from 1944 October. Actually, another bombing happened only 2 years ago, 1999. There were 78 days of the NATO bombing of Serbia. 19 countries were members of the Northern Atlantic Treaty Organization at that moment. Serbia was with Montenegro at that time called the still Yugoslavia. The NATO bombing lasted for 78 days, and it was another interesting, pretty crazy moment of modern human history. Altogether, there are no bombs and wars anymore, so you can smile again, because Belgrade in the peace, it's just absolutely great place. This is the way we go. We are heading toward the language story in front of the language museum. Because it was, of course, renovated a couple of times, and now it's protected by the Serbian law. But once in the history, this house was really one of the largest houses in the city. It was around 270 years ago, and it was owned by one pretty wealthy Turkish Ottoman family. They lived inside. But later, when the liberation of Serbian territory started, immediately after the first freedom Serbs gained in the first uprising in 1806, just 2 years later, this building was turned into the institution called the Big School, which was actually the beginning of Belgrade University history. So 1808, we can say university beginnings of Belgrade, and really step by step this became small to host university, right? They built some other, and this building was changing the purposes, was a French consulate for a while, and then since 1948, this is the Language Museum. So this is the Museum of Serbian Language Reformers, the Museum of Vuk Karadžić and the City of Radović, two men who reformed the Serbian language in the 19th century, and they are responsible for, let's say, modern Serbian language identity. So what they did is they just transformed the Serbian language into the rule, one sign, one sound, 30 signs, 30 sounds, and in Serbian language there is no spelling. So in Serbian language we use a golden rule which says write as you speak, read as it is written. That's why sometimes when we have to learn some other languages like English, German, some other with spelling, we are always a bit confused, and we are always saying why this confusing spelling when it's possible to have language without that. But guys, we all know what confusing is for you. When you look on the maps of the city, you mostly see the maps are written in Latin. Then you want to find something around, you look on the name of the street, then you look on the map, and again on the name of the street, then again on the map, and mostly you are on the right spot, but you know, one thing is written in two different alphabets. So this is the country which has two different alphabets in use. So we have a Cyrillic alphabet and a Latin alphabet. So how come we have two alphabets in use? Cyrillic alphabet is a Serbian traditional, historically used, and it's very important part for Serbian, let's say, the identity. And then Latin alphabet is also widely in use for maybe younger generation, even a bit more than Cyrillic. And then how come we have Latin then if the Cyrillic is a part of identity? It is because of the Yugoslav times. You know, Yugoslavia, the country where I was born in 1987, it used to be one country, 6 republics together, one official language, 2 official alphabets, Cyrillic and Latin, because Yugoslav people are, you know, in a blood way they are very similar, but in a bit of cultural way they are a bit different. And then Yugoslavia used Cyrillic and Latin equally. Everyone was required to learn both of them in the school, and then of course Serbs used to write in Latin as well in the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, last century. Then Yugoslavia broke up, then Latin just remained, and now they teach us both in the school, first the Cyrillic, later Latin, and only when the teachers say, hey kids, today you have to write in Latin, you have to respect, hey today you have to write in Cyrillic, you have to respect. Any other moment no one cares, because everyone knows both, because in some countries people know 2 languages because their countries you know, duolingual. And then please, it's something similar here. And then what's also interesting and important is to understand the names of the languages. You know, if I was born in Yugoslavia, which language I was speaking as a maternal when I was a child? Do you have any idea?
Now they call it Serbo-Croatian.
They used to call it Serbo-Croatian, so in Yugoslavia, the official language was Serbo-Croat, Serbo-Croatian. So 6 people from 6 Yugoslav republics, then if they meet each other, you know, they spoke in Serbo-Croat. but there is no Yugoslavia anymore, and of course there is no Serbo-Croatian language anymore. Now we have 6 completely independent states around, and of course people in each of these independent republics today, they used to say they speak their own language right now. So now we have languages divided into Serbian, Croatian, Bosnian, Montenegrin, Macedonian, and Slovenian. But you have to know that 4 out of these 6 languages are actually one language with a different dialects and different accents. So which ones are the same? Serbian, Croatian, Bosnian, and Montenegrin. It's actually one language, different dialects and accents. But guys, now we have independent states, and we really need to have our own independent identities. That's why I speak Serbian. The friends of mine from Croatia, Bosnia, and Montenegro, they speak even 3 more when we see each other. And of course, after so many years, we still completely understand each other. So basically, we speak one language, different dialects. But unfortunately, stupid politics in the Balkans makes even much bigger difference that we are really different. That's why you have to be careful and ready for this. If you are once the boss, or you are already the boss of the company in your country, you want to employ some new, good, smart, and intelligent people. And if someone from the Balkan Yugoslav region comes to you with a CV and saying, hey, my boss, look at my CV, I'm much better than many other candidates because I know more languages. I know Serbian, Croatian, Bosnian, Montenegrin, and English. That person is not so smart. That person knows only 2 languages, right? English, which is completely different, and one more. Which one? This one, here, where, everywhere, guys. Beograd, Zagreb, Split, Dubrovnik, Mostar, Sarajevo, Banja Luka, Kotor, Niš, Novi Sad, beautiful Serbian, Yugoslav cities. We just understand each other because we have less than 1% of completely different words. But the dialects and accents are a bit different. That's why if you listen to someone, or if you're from here, then you listen to someone, you can guess maybe Central Bosnia, or Dalmatia in Croatia, or even me, I can guess which part of Serbia is the person talking to me, because small region, but still you have a small local differences. But to be honest, Macedonian and Slovenian, they are a bit different. They are same group of languages, Slavic languages, but they are a bit different and probably deserve to be called in a different way. But these 4 are really one. And this is not what I'm saying that they are one. This is what the linguists agreed. But politics will not soon. And really, the different names of the languages exist. And that's why the official Bosnian, official Croatian, official Serbian, official Montenegrin. But when you are from Poland and you study the Serbian language, you don't study Serbian, you study Serbo-Croat, because they just teach you about dialects as well, and you are happy to talk to other people around. If you don't understand what I'm talking about, just please imagine English-speaking countries, or even better example, Spanish-speaking countries around the world, divided into Argentinian, Chilean, Bolivian, Guatemala, Costa Rica, Panama, Nicaragua, Uruguay, Paraguay, Peru, Bolivia, Venezuela, and all of others. Of course, it's always Spanish, but of course should be a bit of difference between Madrid, Buenos Aires, and Mexico City, because thousands of the kilometers are around. But here is the same, but the Balkans will be always interesting for you and for us when we are more divided. So never boring, always excited area.
So you speak Spanish also?
No, I don't speak. I just give you an example to understand, because I have a feeling, I'm ethnic Serb really, but I was born in Yugoslavia, and in one hand, I don't mind too much. We need a happiness in the life, right? Of course, I love my country as a patriot, but what's interesting, I have the feeling that there are no more similar people around the world more divided than we are here in Yugoslavia. It's in one way interesting, in the other hand it's pity, because you have big countries where you have ethnically different people, completely in a different religions, but they swear for their nation and their flag, while here, you see me, I'm a Serb, but if you see me in Croatia, you could be saying, okay, look at this handsome Croat, right? Or, a good ethnic Muslim looking Bosnian, right? Or the high Montenegrin, because we have all Slavic brothers, unique, same origin. Even the origin is very similar to the Czechs, to the Slovaks in a Slavic way. But on the other hand, there is a bit of that Balkan division mentality, because someone pushed it in our brain that we will be better if we are very different than someone else, or we will be stronger if we are living in a smaller state, which is absolutely not true, because Yugoslavia was respected by the rest of the world as an important state, as a state. And here in Serbia, who cares? People do not know. But it's not so important about people knowing or not knowing. Important is the quality of the life, and that's how we can reach it once even as independent. I have something else. I should have here, among many other stuff. Yeah, it's all the photo which is actually presenting the alphabet. So this is a Serbian Cyrillic, which is not same as a Russian, Bulgarian, and other Cyrillic. Similar but not the same. So this is Serbian Cyrillic used among the Serbs in Serbia, Montenegro, Bosnia, or of course everywhere else where they are. There are 30 signs and 30 sounds. So one letter, one sound always. And there are only 7 signs which are fully same in Latin and in Cyrillic. So, and now I will tell you some of the interesting, crazy differences. First of all, this one here is not C, this one is S, or just a S. So the beginning of Serbia name starts with this one, it's a S, right, Serbia. Then this one here is not P, this one is R, R, very strong, and we pronounce it as a R, so R, very strong. And then please, the one here is not a H, this one is N, or just a N, one sign, one sound, it's a N. Then, for example, the one here looks like number 3, but these are not numbers, these are letters. So this is Serbian Z, Z. My name in Latin starts with Z, but Z has an extra sign on the top, so I'm not Zeljko, I'm Ž, Željko. And Ž, for example, is a very Slavic sound, but Ž is also Portuguese. You know Jose Mourinho, so he's, you know, the coach, so Jose. Or you have a Roger Federer, or Roger, depends in which language you want to say his name. But for example, Ž exists also in the language we understand each other now, it's actually English. But English has a Ž only in pronunciation. We watch television, we have a vision about the future of the world after Corona, right? But if you want to write a Ž on the paper, you don't have the option to write J because there is no sign for that. But television, you know, that's how it is written. My name in Cyrillic starts with this sign. You see, it looks like a frog. It's actually Serbian Cyrillic J. And then, of course, you know, on the top it's a B. The B is actually V. So you need 2-3 days to focus, and then you will read everything around, which is, you know, you don't need too much, but it's fine. Altogether, 30 signs, 30 sounds. It goes like this. So this is what the teachers were really forcing us to know when we were the kids like this. Now if someone wakes you up in the middle of the night, say, come on, alphabet. Okay, because of course, like you know your alphabet, of course that we know our alphabet, right? That's it. And yes.
This and this are
Yes,
the same.
thank you very much. If you go on the top of the hill, not so far, we are on the top of it, that means in a pedestrian street, and then the other side of the street goes again slowly down the other hill, the other side of the hill to the Sava River. So the street looks like this, connecting the Sava and the Danube River. It's like the arch, and this is actually the shortest connection between two rivers in Belgrade City. And you know, Belgrade City was formed into two big European rivers. Before the trains, highways, and the planes, the rivers were the only ways the communication, you know, except of those caravan roads, right? And then, of course, Belgrade on two big rivers was always addicted to the good trade. But traders were not only Serbian people, but traders were Serbs, but also Armenians, Turks, Greeks, Jews, people from Venice, from Dubrovnik, from many other areas. And then, of course, all of those nationalities who came because of the trade in Belgrade, but if they remained living a longer period, they left a bit of their cultural influence. And then, of course, that's how this street, historically inhabited by many different people, is considered as the most tolerant street in the city. How? Because we have 3 worldwide religions just standing in one street. So you can see 50 meters away there is a mosque, and then that's the mosque. I'll tell you the story. Then in this nice building here, it's the Jewish property, Jewish Cultural Center, Historical Museum of the Yugoslav and Belgrade Jews, Quarry Society, and the municipality seat. And in the same street, on the other side of the hill, it's a Serbian Orthodox Cathedral, so the main Serbian Christian church. So 3 worldwide religions just next to each other in one street. At least even Catholic Church is not so far, but it's only a couple of blocks that way. And then, which is nice, which is important to understand. This, take a look at the mosque. The mosque is small, but it used to be the highest object in Belgrade once when the Turks controlled around 400 years ago. No one knows exactly in which period it was built, but approximately we can say it's between 300 and 400 years old. And listen, in those moments, Belgrade, of course, was with small buildings, all of this did not exist. And then it was important for the people who practiced Islam at the time to see the minaret. Why? Because during the prayer, the imam, the priest, he was going on the top. And when there was a prayer time, there wasn't sound system as it is today, modern age. There was the imam waving with a flag. And that was a signal for other people to start the prayer. That's why the mosque in Belgrade is called the Bayrakli Mosque. Bayrak is a Turkish word for a flag. So it's the mosque with a flag. The mosque is still here. It's still in use, protected by a Serbian law. But guys, listen to this. Belgrade has only one preserved mosque, and the city was at least 320 years under the Turkish rule. And listen to this, something else is interesting. Belgrade is one of the oldest Christian European cities where Christianity is a religion for more than 1,700 years. And there are no churches from medieval age and the older times, only churches from last 200 years when you remember Serbian side started getting autonomous rights. And Belgrade, this is the year since 500 years since the data of the Jewish life in Belgrade exists, 1521, 2021. There used to be 5 synagogues to the time, only one remained and it's active in Belgrade, it's protected by the law. So why is everything like this about religious objects? It is because of that crazy long and turbulent history we had. So what determined the very turbulent history of Belgrade? It's not a bit of also our, crazy mentality. It's so much about geography and strategically place where the country is, where Belgrade is. Remember at the beginning, I told you I'm a master in geography, so I'm a tour guide and I use, tour guide is my life. I think I will do this forever. But listen, geography knowledge is also important for understanding history and politics in the same time. When you look in Europe, there is no other European capital which is situated in the confluence of 2 big European rivers. So what makes Belgrade a geographical location very interesting and good? First of all, 2 useful, long and important European rivers, the Sava and the Danube, and you'll see both of them in the confluence just in 20 minutes. Then please, 2 big European rivers, they are also feeding the city, connecting the city, protecting the city, right? Then also 2 big European rivers are meeting each other between 2 geographically different parts of Europe. Guys, we are now south from the Sava and the Danube rivers. So we are in the peninsula, which has a very famous name we just mentioned 2 or 3 times previously. How is the name of the peninsula where we are standing? It's a big, but it's famous and it's cool. You all know. The Balkans.
Balkans.
You all know, this is the Balkans, right? But listen, we are now on the northern part of the Balkans. Once you are in European part of Istanbul or in Athens, you are also in the Balkans. So the Balkans is everything south from the Sava and the Danube rivers. So this is like 1 kilometer south from the Sava and the Danube rivers. Listen, we are now in the Balkans, and the Balkans got the name after the Bulgarian mountain called the Balkan. So then the Balkans is the whole, like Pyrenees or, Apennine in Italy, Pyrenees in Spain and Portugal, right? So listen, this is the Balkans, and it's hilly and mountainous, right? More you go east, west, and south of Serbia, bigger mountains you find. Same is into Montenegro, Albania, Macedonia, Greece. Please, across the rivers, it's Serbia as well, but it's a central European part of Serbia because it's a central European Pannonian plain. So it's fully geographically different. It's just a plain. It was the bottom of Pannonian Sea, right? It's like the Netherlands, Netherland, lowland, Pannonian Sea. So Pannonian actually sea once, and now Pannonian plain. So 2 big rivers are meeting where the plain is meeting the hills and mountains. So those who had the control on the fortress, of course they could control, at least defend properly themselves against those who attack, and also they could defend against those who attack from the back. And then another thing is, for the crazy history, these 2 rivers, they were hundreds of years, the borders between different countries, different cultures, different empires, different religions. So guys, Roman land once, barbarian territory there. Byzantine-Hungarian border, Serbian-Hungarian border, Turkish-Ottoman-Austrian border, Serbian-Austro-Hungarian border. So all of those big boys, of course they wanted to take Belgrade for themselves. All of those who already controlled Belgrade, they wanted to keep it for themselves. That's why there were many wars, many problems, many battles. And that's why we don't have many mosques remaining, only one. That's why we don't have a synagogues, only one. That's why we don't have old medieval Christian objects, because everything old was gone in the conflicts. And of course in the fires, because there was no concrete and all of these protections which we have in a modern age. Of course that Serbia has even older mosques than this. We have even 6 Orthodox monasteries protected by UNESCO, but in Belgrade, because of turbulent history, we have more than 2,000 years of the history. But the oldest house we have remaining in Belgrade ground is from Austrian period, from 1726. So not yet even 300 years old. So mosque is among the oldest objects which is still in use among the people in Belgrade. Of course the fortress is much older. Some parts of the fortress remain from Roman and Byzantine period, but fortress is not inhabited anymore. It's just the attraction, and of course it's a proof of the long history. But on the fortress we have really Roman remains, Byzantine, Austrian, Serbian, Turkish remains as well. And that's where we go now, heading to the fortress. So more than half of the tour is behind us, but the rest is so important because highlights are coming. then we are at the Belgrade Fortress. So two in one, like a coffee, and of course it's number one attraction in Belgrade. So while I'm talking, you can also use the opportunity to take some nice photos. But next 7-8 minutes, I'll focus on the history. Of course, the most important things, in my opinion, that are related with the history of Belgrade. Listen to this. The first ever settlement formed here on the top of the hill, about which, let's say, the human history has a bit more data, is actually Celtic settlement in the 3rd century BC. So around 2,300 years ago, Celtic or Celtic in English tribes, they lived here, and then please, they didn't have a fortress. They lived here on the top of the hill, they lived along the Danube, even a couple of kilometers away, but nearby, and then what happened, they lived, but they didn't have the proper fortress to defend themselves. That's why once when the Romans arrived around here, Romans conquered this area with not so big problems, and then the Roman Empire officials realized how it's a perfect position for the fortress, right? And the first fortress ever was built by the Romans around 2,000 years ago. That fortress was much smaller than this one, but was very big for the time when it was built. That's why the Romans kept the control with a small break for more than 4 centuries, but even for such a strong Romans, there was a trouble in the 5th century. 441, Attila the Hun, with his strong nomadic tribes of the Huns, they just passed through the city, they rubbed everything around, at the end they burnt everything, and of course the city of Belgrade was not yet called the Belgrade, was called the Singidunum, stayed as a totally abandoned spot for a while. So no one lived here, there was a bit of sad atmosphere, and then what happened step by step, there was another positive period during Byzantine period. Western and Eastern Roman empires existed, Western Empire has been conquered, in the meantime has fallen, Byzantine Empire, Eastern Roman Empire has remained, and Justinian I, who was a Roman emperor born on the nowadays Serbian territory, who was, by the way, famous because he was in charge of building Hagia Sophia in Constantinople, nowadays Istanbul. He was in charge of reparations around here. So Byzantines, let's say, repaired the fortress, and then the life was still going on. And then in the same time, when the Byzantines were controlling this area, there were some other migrations of the Slavic European people. So the Serbs belonged to the Slavic European tribes, and according to the written history, Pan-Slavic territory, where Serbs also lived with many others, was somewhere there where nowadays the Central Europe, Poland, Baltics, Belarus, Czech, Slovak, Eastern German territories. And then probably they were cold around there, yes, and they were looking for a fertile soil and more sun on the south. Then the Serbs were moving step by step, following the Panionian Plain on the Danube River as well. And once, the story says, when they realized the beautiful white fortress standing above the rivers, they were so amazed by the beauty, and they said, wow, Beograd, Beograd, white city, white city, white city, and the name remained. So guys, Serbian name of the city of Belgrade doesn't have L, so it's a Beograd, B-E-O-G-R-A-D. That's how it's written, and it's pronounced Beograd, and it exactly means white city. The reason for white in the name is actually most of the white color on the fortress. Of course, looks a bit gray or yellowish because it's hundreds of years old, but this white stone comes originally from Belgrade underground caves. The name remained, Serbian people remained, but of course not only the Serbs were in the charge of the history of such a great strategical spot. Serbs, Hungarians, Bulgarians, Byzantines, all of these nationalities, even less famous, who don't exist anymore, like Avars, Goths, Visigoths, Sarmats, Gepids, many tribes who disappeared, or just they were assimilated with the rest of stronger, they were just fighting so much. And of course Belgrade as a city was changing the owners very often, and the city was bored always, in some wars and reconstructions, renovations, destructions. The city of Belgrade was never part of Serbian territory fully until the end of the 13th century. That was at 1284. Serbia was already independent medieval state in the Balkans, but Serbian historical territory is more south from here. So what central and southern Serbia is. And then what happened? Belgrade became first time Serbian in 1284 after one wedding. The Serbian king married Hungarian princess, and his father-in-law gave him Belgrade and territory around as a wedding gift. So Belgrade became part of Serbia as a wedding gift. That's why I'm not married yet. You see, it's possible. It's, I'm looking for the girl that has such a big castle. Of course, this is not true, but listen, in those moments, Serbo-Hungarian relation had to be very good. Their love happened as well. The European continent was very afraid. The Turkish Ottoman Empire was growing, and of course, conquering step by step. They were saying, oh my God, let's be together somehow. And it was luck for them. Belgrade was a Serbian, but not so long. From 1284 until 1319. 1319, Belgrade Belgrade was given back to Hungary. In the meantime, Turkish army started attacking the Balkan territory and also south of Serbia as well. And then Serbia was a strong medieval state giving a big resistance, but Serbia couldn't defend forever. There were two battles, or many battles, but two very famous, Marica River battle and Kosovo field battle, when Serbian and Turkish army were fighting a lot. Losses for the both sides were very, very strong, big, but Serbia after those two battles was never strong enough as it used to be before. And then the Turks even did not attack Serbia next 70 years, but once later they came back, Serbia was conquered fully. And what happened? In the meantime, Serbia lost the southern territory after those battles, but the north of Serbia, which was here where Belgrade is, was still free. That's why Serbs were strategically thinking, okay, we have to move now more to the north, so they were moving the capital. For example, Skopje in Macedonia was a capital of medieval Serbia. Prizren in Kosovo and Metohija was a capital of Serbia. So we had lots of capitals in the history, yeah? And they were moving, to the north, running away from the Turkish influence. What happened? Belgrade was proclaimed as a capital of Serbia first time ever in 1403. So more than 600 years ago, Belgrade was a capital for the first time. They built new towers, new walls. Belgrade was a free trade city, two rivers. It was something like Dubai at the time, right? And then 50,000 people lived. You can imagine medieval Belgrade, 50,000. Belgrade, when the Turks left in 1867, 25,000. So medieval Belgrade was 2 times bigger than Belgrade at the end of the 19th century. So it's really interesting. It was, glorious moment. Part of what happened is also accidental death of Serbian leader in 1427. Belgrade, with the agreement which existed before on the paper, had to be given one more time back to Hungary. Then Serbs were still free, but they didn't have a capital anymore. What they did, they built another capital. They built Smederevo Fortress, which is 50 kilometers south downstream on the Danube. Smederevo Fortress is still today historically the largest fortress in the lowland in the whole Europe. Smederevo was a capital, but listen, in the meantime, Turkish Ottoman army has conquered Constantinople, 1453. Byzantine Empire has finished its, let's say, historical era. 6 years later, 1459, Smederevo city was conquered. That was the end of medieval Serbian territory, medieval Serbian country. 1459 until 1878, 429 years, Serbian people didn't have the state, their national state. The Serbian identity remained, living a lot in the Ottoman Empire. Lots of Serbs migrated across the rivers where there used to be Austrian Empire because the life conditions, cultural conditions were better there. What happened is 1427 Belgrade was not anymore Serbian, but listen, Serbia has fallen in 1459 while Belgrade was still free as a part of Hungary until 1521. In 1521, July, the end, was a year when Turkish Ottoman army with Suleiman the Great finally conquered Belgrade after 130 years of attacking. So Turkish Ottoman Empire needed 130 years to conquer such a strong and brave fortress at a time. When Belgrade Fortress was conquered, it was very easy to conquer Pannonian Plain because it's just a big plain in front. And later what happened? From 1521 until 1867, Belgrade was mostly in the Turkish hands, but not constantly in the Turkish hands because another big empire was facing the Balkans from the Central Europe. It was Austrian Empire. So the Austrians and the Ottoman Turks have changed the power in Belgrade 3 times. So you can imagine Turks, Austrians, Turks, Austrians, Turks, Austrians, where were the Serbs in the sandwich of 2 huge, strong empires. And then the 19th century, by the way, 26 years of Austrian, but more than 300 years of the Turkish. But listen, in the meantime, the longest Austrian period was from 1717 to 1739. The big Baroque reconstruction was introduced around the fortress. That's why we have lots of bricks on the fortress as well. So the bricks are younger than white stones. And listen, for 1521, then the 19th century, when the Austrians and the Ottomans were, tired of the wars, then the Serbs realized, okay, this is maybe a good chance to be free again. Then, of course, with the Prince Mihailo, with many other very big heroes, the people who were ready to sacrifice their lives a lot, step by step, Serbia was getting autonomous rights and full independence was gained. In July 1878 Berlin Congress, Serbia appeared again as a politically independent state, while a couple of years before that, you remember Prince Mihailo on the top of the horse on the square, April 1867. Prince Mihailo is a Serbian representative, Ali Riza Pasha as the last commander of Turkish fortress. They just met in front of the fortress in the park. Ali Riza Pasha gave the keys to the fortress, symbolically of the fortress, to Prince Mihailo. Prince Mihailo took the keys. Turkish Ottoman army marched out from Belgrade back to Istanbul that way. Prince Mihailo entered the fortress from the other side. He put the flag of Serbia. Belgrade became again free Serbian city after 440 years long break. And listen to this. After that moment, until this moment, Belgrade City was constantly the capital of all the countries which existed around. So, easy question for you. Do you remember the country where I was born? Yugoslavia.
Yugoslavia.
All of us, older than 30 years, we were born in Socialist Federal Republic of Yugoslavia. That was my first homeland. After that, I lived in Federal Republic of Yugoslavia. Then I lived in Serbia and Montenegro. Now I live in Serbia. So guys, I have changed the 4 different countries. I have never moved from my country. If you want to do something similar back home, you will never do the same. Even if you really want, here they didn't ask us, do we want or not? You know, crazy changes were going on, and really people had to find a way to pass through, and you know, some people were doing it easily. Of course, politicians, while lots of amazing people struggled just because of heavy, stupid political decisions which were followed in the society. And then what happened? I lived in 4 countries, but I'm not recorder at all, because older generation than I am, they lived even in more. So since 1878 until this moment, Belgrade City was a capital of the following states, one by one, step by step, chronologically. Serbian Principality, Serbian Kingdom, Kingdom of the Serbs, Croats and Slovenians, Kingdom of Yugoslavia, Federal Democratic Yugoslavia, Federal People's Republic of Yugoslavia, plus 4 countries of mine, altogether 10. So ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the absolute Guinness World Recorder city in last 150 years, capital city of 10 countries, different names, even different borders sometimes, but really one eternal city stands between the Balkan Peninsula and Central Europe, and it looks like after every trouble, the city doesn't care about the hard past, always goes further and becomes bigger and bigger and stronger. So if you ever ask yourself how this guy looks like he doesn't breathe during the story, it is because of Belgrade. This city inspires me so much that I can't explain you how I'm happy when I talk about Belgrade, because Belgrade gave us so much, at least we can give a bit of our smile and life to this amazing place that I live in. So guys, this was the quickest way of the history. Of course, some other tours will tell you more about some specific, like underground tour tomorrow, some other city tours. But it was 7-8, of course, the most important. And listen, now another minute and then you go to see the conference right above. This is the only spot on the fortress from where we can see 4 totally different parts of the fortress built by different people during different periods of the history. Take a look there, it's behind the red fence. You can see right above the behind red fence those 3 lines of the largest white horizontal stone. Just straight away from my position there, and there are 3 lines of the large white horizontal stone. That's a Roman time Belgrade, 2000 years old Roman Belgrade. In that third, let's say, we have even a couple of lines of white stone. So that's the Roman times, and you see Roman times are inside because of course younger walls were put around. Please. After that, you see in the middle of that big wall, you can notice the walls going in a cube shape like this, and you can follow left, right, and behind these 2 gates, these 2 towers, there is another big. That's a Serbian medieval time. So medieval Serbia when Belgrade was capital. After that, there were also Turks. Turks, of course, if they were living here, they were wanted to make sure that their fortress is also strong. So the Turks were building those 2-3 meters extra. On the top of Serbian medieval, they added some extra walls, but the same material was used from Tashmite and underground cave. Here is, you took the photo, this is a Zindan gate. In translation, it means a dungeon, the jail gate, because the enemies of the system were kept down in the jails. While this is southeast, you know. This is toward Istanbul, through Dorchol, you remember the part in Istanbul that way? So this was one of the main entrances from the Turkish side. And then you remember Austrians here, also very good civil engineering, but mostly the bricks, because they had at least 8 brick factories nearby Petrovaradin and Belgrade in that area. Of course, it's a roasted soil, of course, also strong material. So when we see the bricks, we can't say always fully original Austrian, but at least some Austrian, some replicas of the original Austrian walls. So the fortress construction lasted for 18 centuries. So that's why this is one of the most impressive fortresses, one of the biggest as well, but not the biggest in Serbia. Petrovaradin in Novi Sad is even almost 2.5 times bigger than Belgrade Fortress. This is 50 hectares and Petrovaradin is 112 hectares. It's the largest fortress on the Danube in whole Europe. It's just 80 kilometers northwest from here. If the road brings you back to the fortress with the friends and family, there are 2 churches behind the wall. We just see the roof of one with the rocky cross on the corner. Both churches are pretty unique. The one we see is proclaimed as one of top 10 the most unique churches in the whole world because of its interior beauty. The chandeliers in the church were made of the guns, swords, shells, tops used by Serbian army in liberation wars. The point was to show how the guns can be used in artistic form, in something nice, than to be used on the battlefields where, you know, no one is too happy.
I have a question.
Please.
সো ওয়াকিং ট্যুরে ছিলাম। তো সিটি ওয়াকিং ট্যুরে আমার ফ্রেন্ডস সেকো, সে হচ্ছে আমাদের ট্যুর গাইড হিসেবে আজকে কাজ করছিল। তো ভালোই হয়েছে, তার সাথে দেখা হয়েছে, প্রচুর লোকাল জিনিস সম্বন্ধে ইনফরমেশন পেয়েছি। সেই ইনফরমেশনগুলো আমি দেবো ভিডিওতে। আর আমি আর কি বলবো, তারটাই শুনে নাও।
They are buried in front. So altogether, nice church, nice mausoleum. Free of charge if you go separately, but if they see the group, they sometimes ask for €1. Doesn't matter. Really, it's okay, of course, it's a nice old church. By the way, something else you must see, even if this is the last day for you, you have to go to Saint Sava Temple. It's part of our 10:30 tour on Monday, but Saint Sava Temple is the largest active Orthodox church in the whole world. 15,000 square meters of mosaic beautiful art inside. All of those small pieces they combined and it's like wow inside. It's 70 meters high, 91 long, 81 wide. There is even the crypt in underground. It looks really, really amazing and it's one of the main symbols of the city together with the fortress where we went. That's the seat of the church. At the beginning I told you that the Serbian Christians are mostly Orthodox Christians. And one big difference is that in the Orthodox Christianity there is a patriarch as a leader of the church. So Pope in Vatican is not the important person for the Orthodox Christians in Serbia because we have a Serbian patriarch. So it's independent institution for more than 800 years. This is patriarchy. So that's where church officials meet and they talk about some of their stuff. That building is a Balkan-style building. It's a Princess Ljubica house. Ljubica was the mother of Prince Michael on the horse. So this is where Prince Mihailo, the man on the horse, lived when he was a child. This is a Balkan-style, and you see that's the building which remained from 1830s, and now it's a museum. It's a museum of Belgrade interior, house interior in the 19th century. So you can see how Serbia switched from the Turkish seat, you know, to the Vienna Budapest style pianos, furniture, wardrobes and things like this. It's all 50-60 years of difference. Same as in the architecture. Take a look at the White House there, 1830s, 1870s. So 50 years, a big change in Serbia in the 19th century. That White House is also very famous among us and among our guests. Take a look above the entrance. There is a question mark. Do you remember what kafana is?
Yeah.
The oldest possible kafana in Belgrade is a question mark. Question mark, it's a pretty strange name for a kafana, right? It's just the sign. But there is a good story how the sign appeared and remained as the name of the place. This kafana changed the name 4 times. But the 4th name of kafana was Kafana by Cathedral Church. And you know, believers, the church officials, they didn't want the same name for the place where people pray and the place where people do not pray. You know, they just drink, sometimes they dance on the chairs. They protested, nothing was happening, the name was still standing there. Then finally they called police. Then police has arrived and checked what happens around. Then police decided, okay, it's not fair, it must be, you know, the name has to be taken away. And what happened? They just moved that name Kafana by Cathedral Church, and after that the old owner of Kafana, he was disappointed, he didn't know which name to give to his Kafana, and he just wanted to make a temporary solution. He left the question mark for a while, but in the meantime people started saying, see you at a question mark, see you at a question mark, question mark, question mark. Now nobody wants to change the name because it's already very famous. If you ever go there, there are better restaurants for food, but going for a drink there is fine, especially in those parts straight from the entrance because they have a very low tables, low chairs, and this is where I recommend the people to go for mulled rakia at the end of the tour when it's cold. Mulled rakia, same as mulled wine, hot, strong and sweet. And also, if you love a strong coffee, here we have a Turkish, black, Serbian, and domestic coffee. It's actually one coffee with 4 names. So you see 4 people sitting, they order different, they get the same. So just a different way how people like to say. It's a strong coffee, and it's not with milk, and you don't drink that bottom layer. So it's just a coffee. It's not filtered. So don't mix and drink because it's not the way. Yes, that's it, my dear people. This is also, you remember, the Tolerance Street, but also this is, for example, on the place where this white building is, there used to be the first post office ever. On the place where the other part of white building is, there used to be the first post office pharmacy. On this corner, there is memorial plate under the name of the street. It's the first printery bookshop was, so some of the first things ever in Belgrade were also here. So after 2 hours and 45 minutes, here is the end of the tour. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed. Of course, so we covered a really important part of the old town, but many attractions like Nikola Tesla Museum, Parliament, City Hall, St. Mark's Church, St. Sava Temple, they remain.